What's up, my ninjas? I'm Strident, and I am here with another video, so to speak, audio, video, audio thing. I want to talk about Supergirl. So, as you know, it took me a little bit of time to warm up to like the various DC television shows. I hated Arrow with a passion, and then it started to work over time. It was like they listened to all of our complaints and then finally we're like, you know what? There's some validity to what all these guys are saying. Let's not, continue down this Batman Begins road, and let's make a Green Arrow show. So they eventually turned him into Green Arrow. It took 4 seasons, something like that, 3 seasons, but still, it's more Green Arrow. I mean, he still does kind of operate like a Batman Begins type of character, but at least he's called Green Arrow. He looks like Green Arrow, and a lot of things are starting to stem from Green Arrow, and it feels like a superhero show. Flash was on point from the beginning. What I didn't like about Flash when it started was the Bang Baby ripoff that they used as the backbone of the story. That bothered me. I was like, seriously, you could do better. You know what I mean? But at somewhere in the middle of the first season, after what's his name, Barry ghosts for the first time, when he runs past himself, and there's that quick time travel, jump or whatever, then the show became complete wonder. It was just amazing. I had never seen a show take a jump so far in the right direction that it makes you completely forget anything you didn't like previously. So I was geeked, I was amazed, and I still love that show till this day. Every episode I've watched has been gold, completely. I hate the suit still, but in the confines of that world, it works. Zoom's suit works better because it's a little bit smoother, but these are my design sensibilities and aesthetic choices that I think don't work or work. You know what I mean, based on what I do. But I love that show. Now, Supergirl, ugh, god damn. God damn. If ever there was a show that doesn't truly get it, it's Supergirl. There are aspects of the show that feel like the comics because Supergirl is the young cousin of Superman who's always trying to prove herself. But in the comics, she's very young. Like she's still, she's like 18, 19. You know what I mean? She's not like 30 years old or 29, 28, working, has a success. She's not like, how do I put this? Because I guess some people wouldn't say it's a success if you are the assistant to someone else. But if you have, realistically, if you have kind of bolted down consistent work that pays you a living wage or more, and there's job security, then you've succeeded. You know what I mean? You're a success in your, it's a moderate success, but you're still a success in that respect. So she works for a leading magazine or newspaper. She's grown, but she's still complaining like she's a teenager trying to prove herself. And it's getting annoying. It was annoying in the first episode. It was annoying in the second episode. By 6 episodes in, you shouldn't be feeling annoyed at her shtick, you know? The good. The suit grew on me, and I think they changed the suit throughout the series, like the episodes, because now it's brighter. It's got the thumb holes, which maybe it always did, but I remember the early pictures where her suit was all like muted and shit. Like it didn't look like that. The seam lines are all the reds are brighter. It's like everything that they were doing in the dark, Superman, Man of Steel style. They've switched over to the comic style. You know what I mean? And I like that. Sorry for the typing. I got a mechanical keyboard, so it makes more noise. And yeah, I was looking for something. But yeah, so we've had 8 episodes so far. And like I said, the good is the costume looks better. I like Melissa Benoit. I think she's fucking gorgeous. Like, she has some big teeth, but she's pretty, man. I was like, wow. Like, in a cutesy kind of way, she's gorgeous. You know what I'm saying? Like, people, I think that's how she got the role, is the fact that she is beautiful, but in a, how do I put this? It's not like the, she's hotter than you and she's going to flaunt it. It's more, she is kind of a good girl, but she looks that good. You know what I'm saying? Like, she doesn't look good and like I would be falling over myself to go after her. That's not my type. I need thickness. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not just the smile and the eyes and stuff. It's the thickness. You know, I need thickness. I gotta have it. But like, you know, if I was casting the character, I would have casted a younger Kara, not a lot younger, because I'm not saying she's too old, but like, if you want her to get to that point, I would have made her play the role younger, I guess is what I'm saying. So, and Melissa Benoit, she's beautiful and she could play younger. You know what I mean? She can, depending on how you do her hair, depending on how you do her makeup, she could look older or younger. She should be like college age, you know, like freshman in college, if you want her to be, you know, in her 20s or, you know, the end of her teens. What else? But Melissa Benoit, I'll get to those other criticisms in a second. Melissa Benoit is beautiful. I don't have any issues with her, per se. I like how she looks. The costume looks cool. She at times she looks like something out of a comic book, and at other times the poses don't look right. They don't have someone, or whoever they do have, setting up the shot, telling her how to stand, how to position her legs and her arms and such. It's just not there. She needs like a movement coach, so that someone could say, you know, when you look at comics, these are the statuesque poses that speak to or convey this. You know, this conveys strength. This conveys quiet power. You know what I'm saying? Like, Superman is one of those characters who, up until now, he wasn't ripped and he wasn't huge with chiseled muscles and shit like that. He was just a tall guy who stood up in a confident manner. And, I mean, he had a pretty face, but I mean, he didn't look like everyone's idea of the perfect guy. But he carried himself with confidence and this kind of quiet strength that it makes you believe that he is capable of the things that he's capable of, you know, that you see him do in the films. With Supergirl, she's not yet there. So there are times where when she shows up, she should just look thorough. She should look like she's ready to take on the world. Whether or not she actually can, that's what will play out in front of you, but she should look determined. Sometimes they have her floating in the air and her legs are both bent because you can tell Melissa's not comfortable in a harness, or maybe it's riding the wrong way or something. I mean, there's all kinds of little things, you know. And then sometimes she's relaxed and she looks right, you know, and I'm like, huh, that's pretty dope. Another plus, they're following in the footsteps of Flash and Arrow by taking other characters from the DC universe and making them part of this story. They've even had Superman show up on the show twice, once in the pilot and once in the episode with what was his name? Oh goodness, it was something corny with Tron at the end, and he shot like nuclear energy or something. I can't remember what his name was, but anyway, they didn't show him head on, so you don't get to see who he is. He doesn't speak. He just shows up, and then it's like commercial break. And then, you know, she'll be texting him or messaging him, and he'll message back or something like that. They've worked him into the framework so that he exists in this world, and you don't feel like it's taking anything away from the established Superman that we have on screen. That's dope. I give him props for taking that chance, because some of these shows need to exist in a world where Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman exist. That way we can say, you know, like Green Arrow was supposed to be inspired by the character himself. His choice of, you know, the way he operates was inspired by Batman. Instead of just having the show rip off Batman Begins, it should take place in a world that has a Batman. You know what I'm saying? That would make sense. Instead, they chose to stay really far away from that. I don't know if that's by DC's edicts, and from what I've heard on various interviews with the showrunners, I think DC kind of made an edict that Batman will not be in any of these shows. But I kind of feel like he needs to be. I mean, how do you have a show called Gotham that doesn't have Batman in it when the most interesting thing in Batman's universe is Batman? That's why even the villains showed up. The villains showed up because they're interested in taking on this crazy ass dude in a bat suit. But then you make a show where all the villains exist when Batman's like 10 or 11 years old. That doesn't make any sense. They couldn't have that kind of a head start on him, and that's why I can't stand that show. That's why I didn't even mention it in the beginning when I was talking about DC television shows, because that's not a DC television show. That's bullshit. That's a show made by people who don't get it for people that don't get it. I'm sorry if you're offended by my statement, but it's the truth. You don't make a show. You pulled Smallville out your ass and it worked. It worked for people who didn't know much about Superman, but that wasn't Superman's tale. Now you try to do the same thing with Batman, except you want to make him that much younger. This is in a world where we just had Batman Begins. You know what I mean? In a world where we've seen Bruce Wayne's origin in every movie. You want to make a show called Gotham and fuck it up that bad? And then people want to argue about the quality of the show and how good it is and how much it follows the story. Get the fuck out of here. It's just confusion for the sake of confusion because a lot of producers don't get comics because they don't want to read them. There's too much ego involved because they think it's a medium for children. Back to Supergirl. Things that I said I liked. I was talking about the use of other superheroes in the DC universe. They had, characters in general. I've seen, what's the guy's name? Maxwell Lord. He was on there. I like the actor that plays him. If I remember correctly, he was on, was it Fastlane? I could be wrong. He was on one of those kind of shows back in the day. He might have even have been on, no, that wasn't him on, I was about to say New York Undercover. That's taking it way back. But no, I don't think that was him. I'll look him up at some point. But I've seen him on a lot of TV shows. I like the actor. And I like the fact that they made Maxwell Lord, like, cool. And then at kind of, like, after you've underestimated him, then he'll show how intelligent he is. I like that. That's kind of cool. It's different. I like that they had Red Tornado on there. Even though his suit looked jank as fuck, he looked pretty just all over the place. Parts of the design looked cool, but overall, he wasn't even red. He was like maroon. He was the maroon tornado, and it just was like, guys, red. Make him a little bit more sleek. I don't know what these designers have against sleek. It's like they do everything they can to layer the fuck out of every costume, and then they miss the point. I will say Martian Manhunter, who showed up on an episode not too long ago, he looked amazing. He looked better than I would have imagined they would have ever made him look. Although they made his costume black and red. I know in the comics it is black, but a lot of artists will draw it navy blue or have it colored navy blue and then have like shadows play off of it. But it was jet black. It was kind of shiny and it had all the cool red lines on it. I mean, he looked dope either way. I'm not even going to complain. You know what I mean? He looked amazing. And I like that this version of Hank Henshaw is not the same Hank Henshaw that died in and became, well, he didn't die, but that became the cyborg Superman in the comics. Somehow this is like, they made their own version of Hank Henshaw, which I guess they could do since they don't, technically they weren't supposed to use Superman. You know what I mean? And I really wonder how that's going to work, because now that Superman has shown up and saved Kara a couple times, or, once actually, I'm sorry, is he going to show up again? How many times can they use him? Will he have a speaking role? How will that work? I guess we'll have to just see if people care. But, those are the good things. Sometimes the cinematography is good. And that's really it. Overall, though. Actually, I can't go to the overall yet. I'm jumping ahead of myself. God, my brain is like, get this done with. You don't want to really talk about this. But I do, because a lot of people have told me it was good. And I realized that you know, I just did my review on The Force Awakens, and I went back and I looked at, and I'm going to put the footage in the trailer, I mean, in my review. A lot of people don't really get it. You know what I mean? And I'm seeing it more and more and more and more. There are a lot of people who call themselves fans because they like the thing that's being offered. But like when you're really a fan of something, you totally understand, or you at least have a better idea of what this thing is. A lot of these folks don't. And it sounds bad, and it may sound like I am marginalizing people, but or maybe I'm what's the word? I don't know. It may sound super bad, but this is just something I'm noticing. So if you go back, there's a couple videos that show the reactions and the anticipation for episode 1. People were like, it's going to be the greatest thing ever. Star Wars saved my life. It blah, blah, blah. When you really think about it, it's a movie. You sat down and you watched it and it's done. Yes, you enjoyed it. Yes, you laughed. Yes, you cried. Whatever, you have a connection to the characters. But after that, it's done. Maybe it directed you to want to work on that kind of stuff. Okay, that's a plus. Maybe it directed you to just, want to be a super nerd about it and read about everything related to it. Fine. But it's done. But people put Star Wars up on this crazy pedestal that it actually hasn't really earned since probably A New Hope. And it's frustrating because you're still hearing it today. And we just finished getting off of 3 films that sucked horribly. You know what I mean? And people didn't like them in hindsight. But when it was coming out, they were all about it. They were telling us how stupid we were when we said that we didn't think it was that amazing. No, you're crazy. You don't know what you're talking about. Those movies are awesome. Now you ask someone about that shit and they'll tell you the prequels were terrible. It's almost a unanimous thing. Batman, the Nolan trilogy. I've said since day one that Batman Begins is my favorite of the 3 films. I said that The Dark Knight gets all the props it gets because Heath Ledger died. If Heath Ledger didn't pass, then the movie would have been put under a microscope the same way that they do with everything else. His performance was fine, but he wasn't really playing the Joker. He was playing a watered-down version of the character who has no rules. There's nothing. He was like God mode. It was Joker in God mode. He had all the weapons. He had all the stuff. He could show up whenever. He had foresight. He was able to do things ahead of Batman. Like, that's not the Joker. The Joker is, like, just chaotic. Fucking, like, polar chaotic. You know what I mean? Whereas Batman is, like, polar obsessive. You know, like, on his side, it's all control and overpowering intimidation. Whereas on the Joker side, it's just like, whatever I can fucking do to make a mess of shit is what I'm going to do. He doesn't pre-plan unless the joke involves pre-planning. So like things like when he got put in prison, how there was a guy shipped to the prison who the Joker put a bomb inside of him. Like, get the fuck out of here. He doesn't do that kind of shit. But, people loved it. People said it was so awesome, blah, blah, blah. But when you go back and you look at it, people say, oh yeah, this doesn't make sense. That didn't make sense. This didn't make sense. Whatever. Same thing goes for Dark Knight Rises. People now, almost all across the board, are seeing all the issues I pointed out in my review day 1 when the movie came out. The fans don't really get it. Alan Moore said it best. If the fans knew what they wanted, and I might be paraphrasing it a little bit, if the fans knew what they wanted, then they would be the creators. Think about it for a second. They'd be the writers, the creators, and the artists. Because they would be creating the thing that creates the fans. But the fans don't know what they want. That's why when it's given to them, they become fans, when you think about it, And it makes perfect sense. We become fans about shit we didn't know was going to be there. You know what I mean? If we could create everything and decide what everything is going to be, then we would be the creators. But now more than ever, you see a universe of people where there's this huge disconnect between the creators and the consumers. And the consumers talk a lot of shit, and the consumers want a lot of things, but the consumers don't even understand. They don't really understand what it is they consume. They just want to be entertained. They just want to fucking consume. And this is the way it is. With superhero media, it's terrible. Comics don't even act like comics anymore. Video games, oh my god, this is what is killing the industry. The video game industry tries so hard to be like Hollywood, but they listen to the fans. What? Innovate and just put it out there. If it works, then you keep doing it. If it doesn't, then you have to start over. That's the logic. Instead, they're listening to 12-year-olds who have no frame of reference because they don't utilize all the information that's available. They hyper focus on one thing. You know what I'm saying? So, like, my point to all these little facets that I'm pointing out is that these superhero shows don't quite... Supergirl, actually, doesn't quite... It's speaking to that same issue. You have people who are involved that get it to some degree, but they're listening to the wrong people, and therefore they're making mistakes. Now, the action in the show, it's the same shit. The wire work is shoddy. The CG is a lot of times actually really good. The special effects, the computer-generated special effects, they're really good. I was actually surprised a lot of times that, like, for a TV show, it's good. Because, you know, the effects, none of the effects are that super insane. You know what I mean? They're just, like, nicely done. But it's one of those things where I feel like they excel at these kind of effects because their team wants to do better stuff. They want to do more stuff. You see it in The Flash all the time. They keep on upping their game. They step it up every episode. And that's what I want to see in a superhero show. Step it up, make it different. Now, I will say that the set designs, especially when they do the Kryptonian stuff, is garbage. It's pure garbage. It's like you guys could do so much better, especially in a world that Man of Steel already happened, and it set the tone for what Krypton is supposed to look like in the new, like, the modern world, the modern version, the modern film world of Superman. So you should be taking your cues from that. You shouldn't be trying to establish a new version of Krypton now that that's been established. And I get it. People are going to say, oh, it's supposed to be two different continuities. No, it's not. Because when they talk about Superman, they talk about him in the context of the things that happened in the film. When they show Superman, he even looks like the little bit that you get to see of him, the pattern on his suit down to the wrists and the sides of his costume. It looks like the fucking Cavill suit. So it's pretty much supposed to be him without them coming out and just saying that it is. So I don't understand why the design is so lackluster. Like that first episode when they show them putting Kara in her own little rocket, that shit was terrible. Like, it was laughable. I saw student projects with better, more creative design than that, you know? And it shouldn't be like that, you know? But the big thing that bothers me about this show, besides the fact that they barely get the action, because sometimes the end result of the action scene still works, but other times it's kind of like, so that's it? You know what I mean? Like, if she's training and stuff, and she's supposed to be getting better, and if, you know, she's got a government agency behind her and stuff, then we need to see the fruits of this labor. It can't all be, I don't know, so basic. You know what I'm saying? Like, so fucking basic. Like, somebody script out some action that will blow your mind. Also, stop with this, I have to blaze my own path, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, we get that part. But you got an S on your chest. You kind of dumb that down when you put the S on your chest. You wanted to live up to, I mean, even Justice League Unlimited got this shit right. You want to live up to the legacy that your cousin started, which means there's certain things you're going to have to do. I shouldn't say you're going to have to, but there's certain things you're going to have to deal with because people are automatically going to put you in the same box, in the same realm as your cousin. And this is the way the comics have been dealing with Superman and Supergirl for years. She is pretty much, you know, baby Superman, I'm sorry. Baby girl Superman. She runs around and she does similar things because she has similar powers, but there's that little piece that she's potentially more powerful than he is because she was older when she came to our planet. So she's going to live up to that eventually. Even in the New 52 stuff, and I said this when I first heard that this show was coming out. We talked about it in the Off Our Brains or something that me and Agent O were in. I can't remember what video it was, but I know we mentioned it. I know I mentioned it, that I would have preferred for them, costume-wise, to follow the New 52 design and to also follow some of the plot beats that the New 52 version, was doing. Like things like her becoming a Red Lantern. That'd be awesome. Things like her, how powerful she was and, teaming up with Power Girl and like all those little things. Throw that in there. Her being angry because of the fact that this is the situation that she's in. All these things make her more interesting than this bullshit, like watered down girl power crap. It's just so boring after a while. Like men are gonna watch the show too, and like my wife has seen this stuff and she's like, eh. I have a lot of friends that are female that watch these shows and are just like, yeah, that's no girl is gonna act like that and be able to kick the kind of ass that she needs to kick. And it's true. It's so true. And people can call it sexist. You can call it anti-feminist that I'm saying that she needs to do more and stop whining so much. But the truth of the matter is, like, I know many feminists, and they don't all sit there and complain about the fact that there's a guy who does the same thing they do, and they don't want to be exactly like him. Instead of talking about it, they just do it. And I know it's a show, so it's got to be melodramatic, and I got that. But, like, it gets old. You know what I mean? It gets old and it gets whiny. So there's a lot that they have to do to find their stride, Flash found its stride halfway through the first season. This show hasn't found its stride, and it's almost done with its first season. You know what I mean? Like it almost, it will amaze me if the show gets picked up. I mean, it's possible that it will because there's that built-in fan base that just watches TV to watch TV. But it's not a good show. It's not. It does so much wrong, and it how do I put it? It does so much wrong. It does a couple things right, but it just is missing a lot of things. Like having the female version of the Daily Planet complete with, BBC Jimmy Olsen. Like, get the fuck out of here with that shit. I have no problem with Jimmy Olsen being black, but he could still be a dorky black guy. You know what I mean? Like, Jimmy Olsen is supposed to be the dorky black guy. I mean, like, just imagine seeing him and Superman standing side by side, and Jimmy Olsen is just as built and just as, like, handsome as Superman. Like, that's not Jimmy Olsen's role, and it never has been. Some of the best stories about Jimmy Olsen were because of the fact that he's a little awkward, but he's a good guy. You know what I mean? Now you just made him like everybody else. And I hate that. And people will argue and say what they want to say. This isn't a race issue for me. It's the character issue. You know what I mean? He could be Latino for all I care. He could be Chinese. But as long as he's not a little awkward and, looks up to Superman because he wants to be just like him, complete with the wanting to be handsome. I mean, that's why they made him a redhead with freckles in the comics. It's like you see him next to either a blonde or a brunette, muscle-bound superhero, and obviously the freckled, redheaded guy is going to be like, damn, I wish I was that guy. Because typically, they've made the freckles and the red hair on an awkward dude. It's a stereotype. It's like an archetype, a nerd archetype, and that's what they were doing with him. Now you've made him cool, and it's the only thing he could want is powers, so he could do what Superman does and be seen the way that Superman is seen. But didn't we already have this? Like with a lot of other characters, there's villains and heroes alike that want to be like Superman because Superman has all these abilities and things that he can do that no one else can. So like, I think it's more proof that they missed the mark with him. The fact that Perry White at this place that she works at, what is it called, Catco? Jesus Christ, Cat Grant is just a female Perry White, but like modern bitchy Perry White. You know what I mean? Like as a female. And I don't see how that's empowering. I don't see how that's, you know, a step in the right direction. It just seems generic and it seems fucking boring to me. And I don't understand how so many people, you know, I've heard people say it's good and they like it. And I'm just like, what is it that you want out of your shows? And I don't understand why the showrunners don't feel the need to I don't want to say address it differently, but present things differently in a way that actually is more than what the audience expects. Instead, they do exactly what the audience kind of expects, and that's getting frustrating. You know, if you ever watch Emergency Awesome, he'll break shit down, and he breaks shit down a lot of times according to the way the studios think. It's sad that we already know what that is. This shit's been around longer than the studios making it, and this is, you know, it's to the point where there's like little imagination going into how things are done. And I don't like that. I don't like it at all. It bothers me and it makes me kind of annoyed for these kind of shows. But Supergirl has a lot to, you know, to fix in order to get good enough to warrant the kind of praise that it's been getting. Because I've heard people say it's good. There's a difference between watchable and actually good. Yeah, you can watch it without turning it off. You can watch it while you're doing other shit, you know, during your night before you go to sleep or something. But it's not a good show. I mean, dialogue is kind of like, eh. The fact that it's following almost verbatim a lot of the formula that's been in both Flash and Arrow. You got to have your quirky computer person. You got to have your cool but, you know, guarded, you know, other sidekick who wants to be with the main character, and secretly your computer person does too. You got to have your your snazzy lair or base with a bunch of monitors that do nothing except the same shit. Like they all do the same shit. Bunch of computers that all tell you the same fucking information, which is nothing until the episode calls for it to tell you something very specific. You know what I mean? It needs to tell you the specific thing that will help you go to the place you need to go to for the episode to move forward. So everybody's got to have a lair. It's got to be at least, what, 3 or 4 people that sit in that lair and talk to the main character while they're out there. All shit that in the comics, they don't do. You know what I mean? Green Arrow operates with just him and the Canary. That's it. Sometimes when he's working with other people, there'll be other people yelling into his ear, but that's it. There's no computers. There's no, you know, snazzy lair anymore. He used to have his little arrow cave, and people made fun of him, and then he eventually dropped that whole thing. So now he just operates. He just goes and does his thing. Supergirl never had all that shit. I think when she did have it was when it was a Supergirl. I think her name was Matrix, and she was like a shapeshifter. And she worked for Lex Luthor, or worked with Lex Luthor. She was in love with Lex Luthor. It was a whole different take on the character. And even then, he didn't get in her ear all the time and tell her what to do. But there were scenes and episodes where he would tell her, you know, the little piece of information she might have needed to know in order to not die that episode. You know what I'm saying? But like, too much formula. Too much. What they should be doing is for each one, they should look at what the last one did and do something completely different. But instead, they're doing it. And nobody's, like, no one's saying this stuff. Everybody's just like, oh, it's good. I like it. I like it. Because you're entertained. And at the end of the day, it seems to be all anybody gives a shit about. And for me, it's frustrating because it shouldn't be like that. You should be more than entertained. You know what I mean? You gotta be more than entertained. It can't just be, I mean, it is entertainment, but it should bring more than just the bare minimum to entertain. That's what I'm trying to say. And it seems like this is what we're going to get for the foreseeable future from this particular show until it's canceled. And when it gets canceled, no one can be surprised. All the warning signs are right there. It's a poorly done show. I mean, I won't say it's as poor as Gotham. Gotham doesn't really take chances. You know, Gotham is kind of just, what can we do with the villains? We're just gonna put all the villains in a Batman show without Batman, because that's all anyone wants to see. It's like someone took Sam Jackson's quote about DC literally. That DC Marvel has interesting heroes and DC has interesting villains. Well, if your villain is not really interesting, then your heroes really don't have much to do, as we've seen with most of Marvel's movies. And, DC has three of the more compelling heroes, whereas Marvel has all these everyday guys who, everybody can relate to, but their threats aren't really that big of a deal. You know what I'm saying? And too many of them are derivative of DC's interesting villains. You know what I mean? From Thanos to, shit. Green Goblin. It's all like so many elements are derivative of DC villains. Not to start the DC versus Marvel flame war, because if you like comics, you read both, and you get your what you don't get from one, you get from the other, and that's what I do. But I like my DC shit, and I've said it before. I really like my DC stuff. This is the only reason why I even looked at Supergirl. Me and Little Strident were like, what can we do today? Because we had finished cleaning up. We cleaned up all his toys and stuff like that, and cleaned up my man cave, and then it was like, you know what? Let's watch something. And he saw a picture of Supergirl when I was scrolling through stuff on YouTube, and I was like, you know what? Let's go watch Supergirl. We watched Supergirl, and it was both. He didn't even want to finish the episode, and I was bored as hell too. So I don't know, but these are my thoughts on Supergirl. I hope they either find a director, like a new showrunner that can breathe life into this stale ass show. You know what I mean? And like take the things that they're doing right and just boost them up 1,000%, or just cancel this shit and give us something else. Give us a Blue Beetle show already. Give us Blue Beetle and Booster Gold already. A show that's begging to be made in this like post Superman, Batman, and soon to be Wonder Woman, world of superheroes. It's post Avengers world of superheroes on television and on our movie screens. Like, we need that. Give us a Justice Buddies show already. Give it to us. We need that shit. Anyway, that's it for me. You guys have been great. Peace outside.